Live.
Yes, we are. Hi, everybody. For those who are with us live, and hopefully people will be soon, sorry that we started late and that we're in a different place than you expected. Google Hangouts is always tough for me to negotiate, so thank you very much to all of our panelists for being so flexible and understanding. As for me, I'm Ronnie Weiss. I organize the New York Travel Festival, and I'm just here to tell you a little bit about what we have going on this weekend. We have a lot of great, exciting different sessions and speakers and such, one of whom should be joining us soon. Andrew Roat is going to be speaking Sunday about process when it comes to creating narrative, not just content. It was one of the things that was discussed when we were trying to come up with a title for that. I said this was the content creator's block, and apparently there's a lot of pushback on the idea of creating content because it doesn't have that sort of artistic element. Gary Arndt, our gentleman over here, is going to be speaking a couple times on Saturday. He's going to be talking about photography, so appropriate for those who are here. And he's also going to be part of our Tales of the Well-Traveled, along with Beth and Lee, both of whom have been to over 100 countries, as well as Gary. So check that all out, nytravfest.com. Yeah, and for those of you who are content creators, or whatever term you want to use, we do have press credentials available. You just apply via the website. So with no further ado, thank you, everybody, for your patience. Our moderator, Mr. Craig Zabransky.
Thank you for everyone for coming, and thank you for allowing me to talk to such an esteemed panel here of photographers. I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm Craig Zabransky of StayAdventurous.com. I definitely use travel photography with what I do, and I'm sure a lot of us who are listening do as well. I'm going to give a quick overview of everyone here on the panel. We're going to introduce them very briefly, and then I'm going to open up with some questions. The first question will be to everyone, and then I will try to just pick two different photographers for the next bunch of questions. Of course, if you're on live, if you have questions yourself, you can put them on the group chat on the side, and hopefully we will get to them at the end of, towards the end of this Hangout. Okay, so now let's introduce my panel. I'll start in alphabetical order because it's easy. It's the easiest, and I was a Z, so it makes it fun for me. It's Lola Akemade Ackerstrom. Hopefully I pronounced it right. She is a Stockholm-based travel photographer, award-winning as well, and she's produced for the BBC, CNN, National Geographic. Lola, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We have Gary Arndt, Mr. Everything Everywhere. He's been traveling nonstop since 2007. He's won numerous accolades as well from his blog, as well as in travel photography as well. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks for having me.
Then we have Jody Edinburgh. She's quit in 2008 to travel from the legal profession. She has a strong affinity towards Southeast Asian cuisine. I think a lot of us share that as well. Takes great travel photography there as well. Thank you for coming on, Jody.
Thank you for having me.
And then finally we have Andrew Roat. He apparently could tell where the best seat on a plane is from just hearing the flight number. That's pretty impressive. So you could tell he travels a bit. And also he's appeared in New York Times Magazine, Condé Nast, among many other impressive publications. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So this question's for everyone. As a writer, I was told if you write, well, then you're a writer. So if you take travel photography, or if you take pictures, are you a travel photographer? I'm going to ask you each, and we'll start again in alphabetical with Lola to start. What defines travel photographer, or defines a travel photographer, or travel photography to you?
Well, I think the traditional definition of a travel photographer still stands, which is someone who tries to capture a sense of place and communicate that through their imagery. So it could be a professional photographer, it could be an amateur photographer, but as long as they're trying to capture a sense of place and communicating that to their viewers, I think that person is a travel photographer. Now, today, the medium has changed in the way that they disseminate that information or share the stories, but that's it for me.
Absolutely, it's the sense of place. Gary, what are your thoughts on this?
I have a pretty expansive definition. Basically, anything that's not in a studio or not anything that's like a setup photo shoot, maybe excluding weddings and model shoots and things like that, is basically travel photography. People probably wouldn't say photographing your child's birthday party is travel photography, but if it's a birthday party for a child that's in a different part of the world, we would. So pretty much anything where you're outside, and usually but not always using natural light, is what I'd call travel photography.
Sure, that's great. So I guess the Disney World photos are travel photography, of course. Jody, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with what both Gary and Lola have said. The way that technology has enabled photography to be disseminated differently and to reach people that it otherwise couldn't reach. There are different levels. And if you're a story and you're trying to tell that story as you travel, I think giving a sense of place and doing so with the technology available to you is one great way of being a travel photographer.
Sure, absolutely there too. And Andrew, just ask for your thoughts on this.
So I may be the dissenter in this group. I think that maybe there's a distinction to be made between travel photography and being a travel photographer. I think that, as I think Gary said, if you're traveling and shooting and so on and so forth, that can be travel photography. I think if we were to talk to the IRS, they might have a definition along the lines of, is your primary income coming from the commission and sale of travel-related photographs? So I think on one end of the spectrum, being a travel photographer is a self-identifying label. If you want to call yourself that, who am I to say that you're not? But I think on the other hand, there's the professional side of it, which is is this what you're doing day in, day out to make your living? So I think that it's a wide spectrum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Sure, no, and that's a great segue. That is what you do to make a living, correct?
Yes, right? That's what I do to make a living.
So can you give us some insight? There's a lot of people probably on this call that are very curious about not just taking travel photography, but also making it their living. Can you give us some insight about how you make it your living, some of the pros and cons, and some advice?
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things that if you can do anything other than travel photography, do that. But if you're stuck with just being able to do travel photography, then go right ahead. I think that like a lot of creative industries, it's not necessarily for the faint of heart because it's a very competitive arena. It's a very rewarding arena too. I think that I was very fortunate starting my career living in China. So I was in a place at a time when there was a huge amount of stories and news being generated out of a place, and there weren't a lot of people to service that need. So I was very fortunate to have started in a place where there was a lot of demand for photography and not a ton of people to service that. So I think if there's one piece of advice to give to anyone who's thinking about starting out, it's go somewhere where there's a lot of news being generated and not a lot of people there to service that need.
Sure, and I think that is great advice. Lola, I'm going to go to you on this because you also make most of your living as a travel photographer.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, I do. And I think I do agree with Andrew, and I think one thing that people that are also trying to be travel photographers should do is look into their own backyards as well, because sometimes you being in a place might be the best person to tell the story of that place. And so even if you can't make it to China or you can't make it to Peru and can't be that travel photographer that you want to be traveling all over the world, look into your background, tell those untold stories, because that is a way for you to build expertise. And nowadays, because it's such a competitive field, you can't be a generalist anymore. You actually have to come with a specialty and niche, and that could be an advantage, a way to get into the industry.
Sure, and I think shooting in your own backyard as well as in your own background is great. And I think a lot of people do shoot today, and it's a great segue into the next one, because a lot of people have a phone and they put on this app called Instagram. Many of us use it. Instagram is a lot more about filters and followers than it is about pure travel photography, perhaps. Or is we're blurring the lines so much? Is it travel photography in a way as well? And I'm going to ask Jody here, because I know she entices me with some of her Instagram photos, to comment a little bit about Instagram and how she uses it.
Well, unlike the others on the panel, I'm not a professional travel photographer. You know, I'm a writer first and foremost. If no one was reading, I would still be writing because it's something I need to do. And as the years went on, and as my site became my business and the business was built around it, you know, photography became more and more important, and I've tried to improve it in ways that told the story of words even more. So Instagram is one way to do that, and it's used in different ways depending on the way you're, you know, is it a portfolio or is it a storytelling mechanism or is it both? For a lot of people, reality is still abstracted on something like Instagram. You know, you're still able to use filters and demonstrate, you know, a reality that you see that may not actually be what people in front of you might see. It has the ability to get people who are amateurs interested in photography in different ways. But like anything online, with no real barrier to entry, of course, there's a lot of crap on it, like many other mediums out there. And the media that are like that, that just means, you know, you find the people whose stories you find most compelling. So I think for those of us who are wordsmiths, Instagram is an amazing way to tell a story. Looking at Humans of New York, for example, you know, them telling stories on Facebook and using Instagram to push that further led to a bigger business. And there are many different ways that that can manifest, but I think it's a medium that allows people to either showcase their best work or to showcase their mobile work. Obviously, it's something they're proud of if they put it out online.
Yeah, it's definitely people use it for different things, from the selfie with their, you know, outside in the backyard, but within travel photography, some people use it for just on their phones, as well as sometimes people put the DLSR, their really quality work on there. And Gary, I don't know if you use that, but I know that you have a huge Instagram following as well, and I always see your photos on there. How do you use Instagram?
Lots of different ways. It depends on what I'm doing at the time. Right now I'm in Vegas at a conference, and I have absolutely no desire to take photos of Vegas and share them with people unless I can, you know, unless I'm actually going out to get a photo on the strip or something. So I normally, if I'm not doing anything, I'll share photos from my archive, which were taken with my SLR. But yesterday I was in Joshua Tree National Park, and the photo I put on Instagram was something I took with my iPhone. So it depends on what I'm doing. I was in Haiti last month, and I took a lot of images with my iPhone and shared it then. And you'll see people do similar things. So, for example, if you look at the accounts of like Steve McCurry, most of his stuff is things he took from his archive, you know, with an SLR, and I think a lot of his stuff was actually on film. Amy Vitale is very similar. She puts archive stuff, but at the same time, when she's out on assignment, she will also be posting things. She's taking semi-real time, and that may either be with you know, things she processed that night with her SLR or things taken with a smartphone. Ultimately, it's just a platform to put up photos, and what you do with it is up to you. And I like to show people, you know, a wide variety of things of, you know, trips I've taken in the past. I've only really seriously started using Instagram for a little under a year. I had an account before that. So I have just so many photos from past trips that I want to share that, you know, that's gotten a good reception doing that, and I enjoy doing it.
Sure, and you share on Instagram, and all of us share, well, the photographers share on Instagram if they have an account. One of the other things is it's a lot of times people get caught up in the followings or the likes of it, and actually giving it out. I know some places use tag it with this hashtag and then sign up here, and then eventually you'll be able to, you know, we'll repost your photography, and basically you're kind of giving it away for free for exposure versus actually protecting your rights as a photographer as property. So Gary, I wanted to ask you, just to follow up into that, what are your thoughts on giving away for exposure? Because, I mean, you're already a well-established brand versus actually branding your photography and actually selling it or protecting the copyrights on it.
I retain the copyright to everything. I think once you make the decision to put something online, you just have to accept the reality that people may download it or do something with it. As for people sharing my images on Instagram, I have no problem with it at all. A few weeks ago, one of my images got shared by the Beautiful Destinations Instagram account. They have 3.2 million followers. My photo got 107,000 likes so far, and you know, it was great for me because they really were able to provide exposure. In terms of like companies sometimes saying, "Oh, we want to use your photo and we'll give you exposure," well, for that I say no. If you're a for-profit company, you're usually in no position to provide exposure for anything. But in cases like that Instagram account where they actually can do it, and it's really no cost to me, and it's showing my work to a wider audience, I don't have a problem with it.
So, Andrew, I'll move over to you as well on the station. As a more making your living as a travel photographer, how do you protect the copyright aspect of your work, and is it that important?
I mean, I think Gary summed it up nicely. I think anytime something goes online, I mean, if someone really wants to take your photo, they're going to take your photo, and you have to make a decision about whether you want to be someone who is creating new imagery or whether you want to be someone who's constantly tracking down infringement. And I think that I made my peace with that a long time ago. I think that, again, what Gary said, if the whole, we'll use your photo to expose, you to a greater audience, I think most of the time that's baloney. I think that what Gary said about Instagram and things like that, I mean, these things are a sharing community. That is, I think, what it's meant for. So I don't have a problem with it there. I mean, I have a dirty secret in that I have a BlackBerry, so I don't even have Instagram on my phone. So I think that for-profit companies have the ability to pay for things. That's why you have stock agencies like Getty and Corbis and Shutterstock and Offset and so on and so forth. So quid pro quo. If it's a for-profit company, they can certainly pay for it. If it's someone sharing it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever else, then I don't have an issue with that. I think that my stance has always been that I want to be creating new imagery versus tracking people down who are potentially infringing.
The one thing I would add is that for most photographers, I think obscurity is a bigger problem than piracy. That of the photographers I know who have really kind of come in their own in the last 5 years, they've been pretty free with their photos online, and a lot of people have learned about their work, and that's why they've been successful. And had they not been open with their images, I don't think they would have been as successful, and they wouldn't be getting as much work. And at the end of the day, you still own the copyright to your photos. So if Procter & Gamble steals one of your photos to use in an ad, you can still sue them. You still have recourse available. It's just that the average individual, doing something with your photo, you're never going to get any money from that anyhow. So it really doesn't do much for you.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Lola, I'm going to shift gears unless you have something specific for copyright infringement or about protecting your rights, but I know that you're a travel photographer, of course, we all are on the panel, but I wanted to discuss someone loves photography, someone loves to travel. How do they take the next step? They like their pictures. I mean, would you give advice for someone who really wants to get a little bit more serious, maybe move beyond the point-and-click camera or concepts to really take better photography?
Well, I think before you jump into it full time, you have to assess what it is about travel photography or this field that you really like. Is it just, I love traveling to wonderful places and taking pretty pictures and bringing them back? Because it's already so saturated that it's going to be difficult to push through that. But if you feel like you've got something to say, you've got a unique eye, I always advise people to start by specializing in something. If you are wonderful with landscapes, then start with that first. Yes, you're good, you can do everything else, but start by specializing and doing something really well and start building that brand that way. Obviously, you have to keep shooting every day. Try and be upfront about your weaknesses so you can get better and take the classes you need, but also study the industry and study what the specific specialty you're going to be in, study who's already in there and how you want to be different from what's already out there. But again, it boils down to you just can't be a generalist anymore. You have to be able to shoot and specialize and do it really well.
So when you're saying niche, you're saying portrait style or landscape style. Become
Exactly.
known as a specialist in that arena.
Exactly, because again, most really good travel photographers can shoot anything. I mean, I can shoot food, I can shoot landscape. That's not the point. It's about now what's the next step? Where do you want to start building that specialty? Because sorry.
No, for someone starting, I should just take the same photos of the same type to get better, and I guess to understand where I want to create my niche, but also to research it to know
Exactly.
kind of where the holes are, what I could fill, whether it's a location or a certain type of photography memory.
Exactly. And it has to be something you're passionate about. I mean, yes, we throw the word around passion, but if you're not passionate about it, you know, it's going to get tough, and you're not going to be resilient when the tough time comes. So you have to really be passionate about the specialty.
Sure. Now, that's Lola, taking it from Lola's perspective. Joey, I'd love to get it from your perspective as someone who considers herself more of a writer. And I'm sure if you look at your photos back when you first started to today, they've improved greatly. And I'm sure it's not just the camera that you use. There are other aspects. How did you get more serious and get better at taking images?
Thanks. Yeah, I do call myself a writer more than anything else. In the last while, the press that I've received has been primarily about photography or Instagram. And I was almost surprised about it because my focus was always improve your craft and do that by photos and by words. And it's nice to see it paying off, obviously. I think ultimately, as Lola said, it's important to figure out what moves you. And for me, that meant starting with looking at professional photographers and looking at the way that they captured their images. What about it told a story that appealed to me? What about it did I think I could tell in a different way based on the skills that I had and the audience that I had gathered with my writing over the years? So I think, you know, taking the courses was an important way to do that. Looking at photography in different lights. You know, did I want to focus on people's faces or food? I love food, and that's what I write about, but it doesn't tell the only story that I want to tell.
Right.
So following basically the things that interested me and then pushing myself further every time I took something I thought I was proud of to approach someone like Lola, someone I respected and admired, and say, listen, is there any way you can take a quick look at this and then tell me what you think I can do better next time? You know, if you're not trying to improve your craft, be it in writing or photography or anything you're doing, then, you know, you just won't get better. So in my case, it was trying to meet people that I found their work to be truly inspiring and offer them some sort of trade to get their time and get my photos in front of them. And then I did upgrade a camera, but I don't travel with a DSLR. I have a Micro Four Thirds, and Instagram for me is only iPhoneography, and my site, all the photos on my site are primarily with my camera.
The DSLR or the iPhone?
The Micro Four Thirds.
Oh, the Micro, right? You don't have DSLR. So you also mentioned both of Lola and Jody. Thanks. You also mentioned telling a full story, and I know Andrew. We traded a few emails before this, and I thought that was one of the things that really stuck out for me about how it's not necessarily just the niche aspect, because we were looking for someone who does design photography as well, and I saw that in your portfolio, but telling the whole story through these different types of images. Now, I'm not going to think there's a formula that you need 2 of these and 1 of these and 1 portrait, but is there something that you do when you want to tell a story of a place that you kind of use, or it just depends on the place?
So I think Lola touched on this as well. She said, you know, I can shoot food, I can shoot landscape, you know, this sort of thing. I think if you look at, you know, the quote-unquote standard travel story, if there is such a thing, you know, the sort of thing that might appear in Travel and Leisure or Afar or Condé Nast Traveler, the thing about it is you're going to have a mix of imagery. You are going to have the portraiture of the person. You're going to have the beautiful food. You're going to have this landscape kind of, you know, shot. You're going to have a design, architecture, interior kind of shot to show you inside of a place. You're going to have the hurly-burly maybe of a market. So you're going to have these almost different silos of imagery. And I think for a good travel story to have good rhythm and cadence to it, you do need all of these different elements, unless it's a straight food story where it's, you know, simply focusing on the food. I think most of the time when I'm putting together or shooting a story for a magazine, so I'll have a shot list to start with that the magazine provides, you know, go here, go there, so on and so forth. But as I'm building that story throughout the week or whatever it is that I'm shooting, I'm also keeping track of, do I feel like I've got enough portraiture? Do I feel like I've got enough sort of detail shots? Do I feel like I've got enough wide shots? Do I have a sense where with one shot that can be the opening spread that they go, aha, here we are in Shanghai or Barcelona or whatever it is, because immediately you need to be transported from your couch or your cubicle or wherever you're reading this story to the place that I'm bringing to you. And so in some ways there is a formula. I mean, that you do need to hit all of these different aspects in order to bring a story together. And I think if you look at a story in a magazine, I think online is a bit different, but if you look at a story in a magazine, the layout is really important too. And you're not in a good layout, you're going to be looking at two images side by side. Let's say if you've got two full page, one on either side, and on the one side maybe it's a detail, on the other side it's a wide or something like that. But the images themselves are going to be dissimilar enough that you're spending time kind of bouncing back and forth, looking at one and looking at the other, and so on and so forth. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind when you're photographing a story, is how is the image that I just took going to play with some of the other images that I've just shot. Maybe it's something as simple as color that's going between, the images, or maybe it's something more involved. But I do think that for me personally, when I'm shooting these stories, I do have this notion of, okay, what do we got on the food front, the details front, the landscape front, the portrait front, the sense of place front, all of these sort of things, and that it's only once I reach sort of a tipping point at some point during the shoot that I kind of take a step back, breathe a sigh of relief, and say, okay, if I didn't take another shot, we've got it. So I think that that's how I approach a story, is making sure that there's all of these different elements, so that when the art department gets their hands on this, they're not like, wow, Andrew took all of the same pictures. We can't do a layout here that makes any sense.
Sure, and so there is some sort of mental formula that you have for your work, and I assume that that's why people would reach out to you for your stuff. And Gary, I'm going to ask you a little bit about both these questions, because I know that, well, I see a lot of your landscape work, and I know you do a lot of UNESCO traveling. So I was curious about how you've won, like, for photo essays. I've seen some of your photo essay work, and they're basically all landscapes in a row or something. Or do you kind of work a little formula into some of those posts that you provide on your site as well?
The stuff I've been doing recently, I've been purposely trying to not do landscape stuff. So the last several large photo essays I've done have included a lot more than just, especially the one I did from West Africa. There really wasn't much in the way of landscapes to shoot. The areas, for the most part, kind of flat, and it was a lot of images of the people I met. But when I'm out, I'm always thinking in terms of having some sort of photo essay, which will, and it's been changing over time. So it used to be I would have like 20 images I would take and just kind of stack them on top of each other. And the tools that are available for doing photo essays have gotten a lot better now. And so I've been able to, I think the last couple ones I did was the one from West Africa I did last year was like 75 photos, and then I did one from a 3-month road trip through Canada that was close to 100. But just all sorts of things, including wildlife, portrait shots, whatever I find that kind of, I think, tells the story of a place. So I'm always looking for different things now, and it could be anything from a sign to a person to an animal, and then at the end kind of going back and going through the editing process and seeing how I can put it together to kind of give people a glimpse of what that place is like.
Sure.
But for me, I was going to say, the photo essay is like kind of what I aim for. I put up daily photos every day. What I found is that what works for a photo essay, an image might go really well to help tell part of a story in an essay, and it might not get much of a reaction if it's a standalone photo. And I've seen this time and time again where people will, if it's especially images of people work well like that. Whereas if it's a standalone photo, they sometimes die if you put them up on social media or something.
Sure, so it's part of a larger story. It needs to be part of a larger landscape. One of the other things I noticed is color, is what Andrew mentioned was color, and I'm sure color has a lot to do with the different people. Jody, you focus a lot on food. How important is color in that aspect with some of the photography you take?
I mean, in terms of lighting, as Gary said, natural light is preferred, although oftentimes, I'm in Lisbon now, the food is often served in grottos in a dark place. I think I tend to shoot in color regardless, unless it's sort of cobblestones in old city streets or a lot of Asian shots from Asian cities. I do love the feel of black and white, but in food I want someone to take a look at the photo and feel like they want to be a part of that meal. to me, it's, what service am I trying to offer with these photos? And it's often, in my specific case, something where I only post on my site a few times a month. It's a bridge for the people that are paying attention or interested in that to follow along where I might be. I do post in real time, and if I don't, I make it clear that I'm not. So the food photos are more, telling in the caption something about the meal and the history of the food that is there, teaching someone about it, and then the photo itself, hopefully composed well with good light, showing how delicious it might be. But ultimately, it's about what I can teach in terms of history through that photo, and not just the photo itself.
Great, thanks for that. The next thing I wanted to touch on, actually, is I sent a few of you guys some photos in advance, and I know we talked a lot of different aspects of it, but I think what would be beneficial is for people who are going to eventually listen into the Hangout more and more over time is to just take a look at some of these photos and get some professional thoughts. Maybe one thing of a constructive aspect, but also something positive in these photos. I selected 2 photos from sponsors that we have, or destination partners, I should say. One is from Croatia and one is from Mexico. And I'm going to share them now for the audience. If screen share, here we go. Start screen share. So can everyone see that? Is that, or no?
I can see
Sort
a
of.
piece of it.
I'm just getting a corner of it.
Yeah, you might want to zoom out.
Is that better?
Ish.
No.
Andrew, less generous.
Wow, that's zoom. That's about.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah. Wow, that's zoomed out. I did practice this yesterday, and that was a fine size. But okay, so this is a picture from our partner in Mexico, and I was going to ask Lola. I haven't heard from you in a while. If you have some thoughts on this image, something that's great inside it, and also something that maybe perhaps the photographers should take, can make it better.
Well, one thing I really liked about this image was the low light and kind of slice of life feel of the image. I like that it captured some movement, and it makes me curious. What are the guys talking about? What, I want to be like a fly on the wall. The thing that could be better is just in terms of the framing. Better framing the shot would have made it a lot stronger in terms of maybe rule of thirds and positioning the frames. But other than that, I really like this image.
Okay. Thanks. Gary, why don't you chime in on this one, if you don't mind?
It's okay. I think I have a feeling that if there was a series of these images, I don't know what they're doing. They're just kind of standing there. Right. So there are people there, but there's no, I don't know, that one guy is walking over to the group. I don't really know kind of what the story being told. If they were doing something, playing instruments, or you could very clearly see they were dancing, I think it would probably be a little bit better story. And if they're trying to frame around the arch, if you look on the right side of the photo, there's like a part that goes beyond the arch that they could probably crop it out or kind of fill the frame if they just wanted to do the arch. And it's slightly off-center.
Sure. No, true. Okay. Thanks for both those thoughts. Besides, these photos are on my thing. They're not taken by me. I just upload them on my site, just to let you know. They're not both my work here. Okay, I'm going to switch over to this. I'm going to probably need to shrink it. So let me know when it's. Is that good size?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is from Croatia. I wanted to one of the other partners for the event, and we'll ask. We'll go with Jody. If you could chime in on this.
Yeah, I think it's a classic shot that someone might think of when they think of Croatia being on the water on a sailboat. It does seem quite saturated, and it would be nice if it was straight, a little straighter. I do think that it conveys what you want, which is to be on this leisure time if you're taking that kind of vacation. But ultimately, I think the sky's a bit blown out in this case, and it would be nice to see it a little straighter.
Sure. Thanks, Jody. And I guess Andrew, you didn't comment, right? So this
Yeah,
we'll leave this one for you.
I think I'm with Jody on this. I think, I mean, it's sort of a nice image, but I feel it ends up being more of a vacation snap versus necessarily something that it's quite generic, I guess. That could be Croatia, that could be Greece, that could be a lot of different places. On a positive, I guess, I mean, they've used a reasonably long lens, so we've got a bit of compression going on in terms of the sun is large in the photo. But I'd like to see, more of a human element. I would actually love to see someone on the boat in a tighter shot so we get a little personality of who these people are versus necessarily just this wide landscape.
Oh, those are, again, ever some great thoughts on some of these, and I didn't want to put too many up there, but I just figured, I think, from actually seeing a photo and hearing some of your advice to take better photography and what works and what can be improved is great. Thank you very much, both you guys, for sharing, or everyone actually, for sharing that, for sharing your thoughts there. Let me go back to the Hangout here. Stop sharing. Oh, cancel. So now there's no sharing, correct? The image is gone? Well, no. Great, thanks. So, all right, those are the main concepts that I have there. I mean, there's no Twitter questions as of yet. Thanks, Jody, for looking there. I appreciate it. I didn't see any. And we're almost approaching the 1 o'clock. I know this was, we appreciate all your time. What I wanted to do was leave everyone with the opportunity, because we've all traveled around the world through your images in time, to leave everyone an opportunity to, one, give a last bit of advice on entering the world of travel photography, or you have for aspiring travel photographers, as well as also tell us where we could see a portfolio or more of your images. What's a great spot to look for your work? We'll start with you, Lola. Go alphabetical again.
All right. Well, I did want to leave with one piece of advice that I got in January. I was in Washington, D.C. at the National Geographic Photo Seminar that they have every year. And during that discussion, somebody said, a plane ticket is not a story. And the point he was trying to make was that, yes, we all love to travel. That's why we're here. I've been many places as well, but looking at stories in your own background, even if you can't travel, look for stories in your city, in your town, try to tell those stories and photograph them. That's one way of starting. So don't always feel intimidated if you can't go to Tibet or Mongolia. Just start small, start in your background, start where you live. And in terms of finding my work, you could go to akimade.com, AKINMADE.com, and I've got my portfolio there. So that's my piece of advice.
Sure, great, thanks. That is great advice. Appreciate it, Lola. Okay, Gary, what little advice, and where can we find your portfolios?
You can find links to everything I do at everything-everywhere.com. As far as advice, people focus too much on getting a great camera, and the truth is pretty much every digital SLR that's available nowadays has a sensor that's far better than anything produced 5-7 years ago. The best investment you can make once you have the basics of camera equipment, a body and a couple lenses, is a plane ticket to just go somewhere. Because all the great shots, you can, people that obsess about having the right lens and the right camera, no, you got to be there. That's the thing. Some of the greatest photos of the 20th century, like I'm thinking of shots like from the Vietnam War or from World War II or something, are slightly out of focus. They're a little bit fuzzy, but they're still great photos because they captured an instant in time that was amazing, and the photographer just happened to be there. And if you're not there, all the equipment is completely useless. So get a camera and then go.
All right, go everywhere. Great advice. So Andrew, where can we find your work, as well as also a little bit of advice for the listeners?
So you can find my work on my website, andrewrowat.com. That's R-O-W-A-T, so andrewrowat.com, or on Instagram. I do occasionally post. That's at Andrew Rowat. I think I'd echo what Gary says. I mean, there's no magic, formula to do this other than just doing it. Go out and take pictures. I know my first portfolios that I still shoot a lot on film, and certainly my first portfolios, I think it was a Mamiya RB67, not even the RZ67, and a 90 and maybe a 50, 2 lenses, travel around from sort of China up to Scandinavia through Russia, shot, put together a portfolio, went to New York and met with people, and that was fine. I don't think you need all the latest whiz-bang, whatever. You just need to go and take some pictures. And I think that the best advice, if you're wanting to go the professional route, that I ever heard was put in your portfolio what you want to shoot, not what you think other people want to see. Because if you're going to get into this whole racket to begin with, you may as well do it for the reasons that you want to be in it, not for the reasons you think someone else wants to be in it.
Oh, absolutely, that's great advice as well. And I apologize, Jody, for going out of alphabetical order. Apparently,
how dare you, Craig?
I saw the A, and I was just like, I'm still in the A's. But I guess saving the best for last, perhaps, Jody, and look at it that way.
I think that it is both important to be interested in telling a story, and I'm going to go a bit of a departure from the other advice in terms of thinking about not just the photos you want to take, but also to step away from yourself a little bit, because I think there has been, with the advent of mobile photography, a little too much emphasis on the selfie and a little too much emphasis on what you are doing in this scene. And for a lot of people who write or looking to do this as a profession, or at least complement words with photography, I think it's got a little too much narcissism in it sometimes, that the best stories are often not about you, that you are a great conduit to getting that out, be it mobile or otherwise, or in black and white or in color, but to have people start thinking a little more when they look at a scene, what would move them and move other people to learn more about that exact moment in time, and that's where they should start. In terms of framing. In terms of finding me on the web, my site is legalnomads.com. It's in the bottom third that Google so helpfully provided me with. I'm on Instagram as Legal Nomads as well. As you know, the name is because I used to be a lawyer, not because I'm doing something.
Into copyright. No, and I think that's and that's great advice. Leave it. Hopefully, this wasn't too much about me and my thoughts about travel photography as I talk on narcissism there. But I appreciate everyone. I wish I could give a round of applause. I don't know. You can't really do every one of our esteemed. I'm sure there would be a lot from the audience at the New York Travel Festival if this was done there. And hopefully we will see, for people interested, Andrew as well as Gary Arndt will be there live in person on the weekend. Andrew is on Sunday and Gary is on Saturday with some events, and you can find all that at nytravfest.com. As far as also, if you're looking for more images, anyone listening in live, there's a Mex Chat, which is on the schedule as well. It's hashtag Mex Chat, and the topic actually is images of Mexico. So there should be some great stuff there. We actually looked at one here today, so hopefully there'll be some, better quality than that one. Some of the things that need to be corrected there. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Spending your time. We are just over the bit of 1 o'clock. I know we started a little bit late, so I appreciate everyone for hanging in there. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yep, thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.